Thank you. Senator Graham, we're honored. I once did an interview when Senator Graham was Governor Graham, and I thought it was like amazing that I got to do, I worked for Tropic Magazine, that he found time for me, and he was the governor. He's up there, you know, whatever, sentencing people to death or whatever they do. Do you remember this? I came, and they had me, his press secretary had me scheduled for, I think, like 15 minutes with the governor, and we had the photographer Joe Rimkus there take pictures. I rushed in with I think I got out maybe 2 hours later, and he followed me out, past all the people who'd been waiting for him, waving his book, which he was trying to get, was Finding Florida on the Job, because he wanted me to write about his book. So anyway, good to see you here. And do you have anything you want to promote while I'm up here? No? We're good? Anyway, I'm going first because I live here. I'm a Miami guy, and I want to introduce our guest, Sandra, and she doesn't remember this, but I do. Years ago when I was on a book tour, I was in Los Angeles, and they said, Sandra Tsing Loh is going to interview you. That's going to be the event. And I thought that was great. And I am embarrassed to say, I did not know who she was. And we did this event, and she was so brilliant and so funny that I started reading everything she wrote, and I still do.
And I don't remember it, not because
it
wasn't
remember
memorable, but because I'm 52 and menopausal, so it's all just a total blur. It's kind of. And did we have a child also?
No, we didn't. We had
small black child, Jewish black child.
No, but I am claiming that child on my income tax.
Okay.
Anyway,
Yes, we'll make that.
so anyway, I wanted to read a quote from your book, and then I want to ask you a question just to kick it off. The quote, because I loved it so much, and I wish I had written it. But you're talking about why you don't like to see the New York Times in the morning. This is such a writer thing to say. She doesn't want to read the New York Times in the morning because, quote, if I see all this great writing there in the New York Times, it makes me think, then why does the world need me to write also? Which is, I think, kind of how all writers feel all the time. We know we're kind of faking it through life.
Yes, don't let the secret out.
Yeah, but so the thing that Sandra does, and a lot of people try to do it but fail, is take everyday life and things that are happening to everybody and see them in a way that nobody else sees them, or I consider this sort of the ultimate humor compliment, sees it in exactly the way everyone else is seeing it, but you never realize that until you read it. So you'll have to take my word if you haven't read this book. This is a really, really funny book about some really scary things, including having affairs and being going through menopause. And I have to say, I was never considering menopause before.
Menopause.
But I'm definitely not doing it now after. But I did notice, and this is what I wanted to ask you about, when you talk about the symptoms of menopause. Some of them I have not had the vaginal dryness.
You just don't remember, Dave.
But some of them, struck me as like true of like almost anybody getting older. One of them is forgetfulness, inability to concentrate, hysterical flatulence.
Now that's actually a technical term, the hysterical flatulence. So to wind back a little bit about how I got on this glamorous journey that has arrived at this stage now is initially it was my editor at the Atlantic Monthly who said, you gotta write an article on menopause, and it's not something, including the vaginal dryness, which you do not recall, but showed up in your colonoscopy. I'm just gonna, is that nobody wants to, the connotations are so negative, sort of you're old and withered and the dry vagina comes up a lot over and over. But he said, this is gonna be huge by 2015, which is next year, brace yourselves, almost 1 in every 2 American women will be menopausal or post. Do you hear that? 1 in 2. I mean, Courtney Love, I think, just recently turned 50. So that's a scary thought right now. Courtney Love in menopause. You know, the Gen Xers are going into menopause. Ready, Set, Menopalooza, which was the original title of the book. See, you got it. But they thought in New York nobody would get the Menopalooza thing. But you know, or Dave Barry's book on menopause is maybe what we should have called it. And actually, next year, over half of American women will be 45 and up. Over half. The majority of American women will be 45 and older. And of course I said, well, yeah, that sounds like a really important book to write, but I can't write it because I'm too tired and bloated and angry and forgetful. What do I know about this? And I think, dialing back to your quote, because I've actually already forgotten the question, but I remember what you were saying about making daily things that we experience and doing that. And I first experienced the onset of whatever it was, I guess it's perimenopause, when everything starts to go, ooh, which can start as early as in your 30s and last between 4 and 15 years. I see some sympathetic nodding. I see this, yeah, there's a lot of me too. So it's really a wild journey. Not that any part of a woman's journey ever feels normal in any case. And when I was like driving along on the freeway, you know, with my favorite classical music station on, and sort of I remembered at that moment, I was really happy about refinancing. Aren't we always happy about refinancing? I got 4.0, isn't that good? Yeah, they're not maybe impressed as they would be in Los Angeles, but, and then my mind was like floating to dinner and just sort of, I'm taking off on a tangent on what you said, and I realized I had promised my 2 daughters, you have the one, I got 2, 12 and 14. Because I gave birth so late. And it's kind of like, so now we're a total hormonal household. And I realized I had promised them that at dinner we would have make your own pizza for dinner. Is anybody sort of an artisanal mom, like make your own pizza is the worst dinner.
This is Miami, this is not California.
This is the worst dinner you can possibly wait. Well, good, because never have it, where you have to go to but you have Trader Joe's here? Okay, now, can I say at Trader Joe's, if I may, okay, so maybe there's commonality here. Do they still have the smallest parking lots of Trader Joe's in the weirdest formations? I mean, there's like in trapezoids and hexagons, and they're polygons, I'm losing it, shapes that you've never seen, and I could not face people in Hawaiian shirts, middle-aged men in Hawaiian shirts and sandals. I don't want to see a foot if you're over a certain age. And the mid-afternoon samples are just so depressing, as opposed to Costco samples, right? Well, I don't know if you're a Costco shopper, that have meat in them, and enchiladas, and your nummy cheeses. At Trader Joe's, the samples are like unfiltered apple cider and whole wheat rotelle, which there should not ever be a whole wheat pasta ever, not even in California. Thank you. Okay, I'm getting some traction. I get it here. But here's the thing, and that's kind of relating back to what you said. I thought about that, and instead of just being irritated, that's at the time I'm like late 40s, I pulled to the side of the freeway and just start crying just uncontrollably. It's just like the floor drops out when I'm just thinking about that mid-afternoon Trader Joe's thing, which seems small, but for women, and this is based on a menopausal, perimenopausal hormone fluctuation, it turns out the French say the hour of the wolf is 4 in the morning. But for middle-aged women, the hour of the wolf is 4 in the afternoon. Because it turns out, and now you will understand, that's where your serotonin and blood sugar starts dropping. And that's just right at the carpool time when you're picking up children and their high irritating voices, about their YouTube, and so that mid-afternoon snack moment, some of us do our grocery store, you know, because we're middle-aged. So if we don't sit down and have a meal, it doesn't count. So we go to all these stores and do samples along the way, and because it doesn't count, right? And you know, at Costco, you go around the 4 stations of the cross, and you need those 15 croissants, the slab of 15 croissants, and then I open it. So anyway, so that's a way I think is humorous, and I would like to put it back to you again, that we take something that seems so small, like that mid-afternoon snack destination, but I think it's very profound, some of these things that we feel. If I may. And we're all in this together, right? But you know what? Here's what I want to ask you. We're going totally off cuff, and now we've already
No, I thought that was that totally I have no idea what you.
I have no idea. We had a plan, and I can't find my reading
I have
glasses.
this theory about men and women and the way they, and you were like exhibiting it there. No, I think the main difference between men and women, and it's the one that women never accept about men, but I think it's true, and I really do think that was a good exhibition of it, is that we don't think that much. Men don't, we're just, like, if you were to look in the brains of men, like in men in this audience right now, a lot of them are just going, you know? And women are like, oh, I don't know. It's like thoughts, and each thought, there's more thoughts and more thoughts and more thoughts. And like the guy is sitting there, it's like, he might have one coherent thought in a whole hour, and it'd be like, my balls itch, you know? It'd be like, but that was a good answer. I have no, you know, is I guess my point.
Well, I think, but you know, with all due respect, Mr. Barry, I think in households, women and the moms are carrying like a fuller load sometimes than you meant, if I may suggest that. And I think that's part of the whole menopause thing. You know, there's a theme there, menopause. As long as I keep saying that, I'll stay on track somewhere. Where the thing is, okay, and there's a little bit of the backstory of, you know, it used to be menopause was the change, but now, you know, and in 1900, the average life expectancy of a U.S. citizen was 47. So most menopausal women were in fact dead. Not so great. Not awesome. Not awesome. Now we live to our 80s and 90s. We live to 116. So menopause isn't the change, it's the return to where you were as a 12-year-old girl. And actually, isn't that great? And your hormone levels go literally back to where they were then, because nobody's making eggs. But so instead of menopause being the change, fertility is the change. That middle 25 years or third of your life when you're making eggs. Most of an adult woman's life, she's not making eggs. This is just an afterthought almost, what we're doing, right? So menopause isn't the change, fertility is the change. And I've seen it in my own daughters. That's where the estrogen cloud comes down. As if in a glaze, you start worrying about boys and brushing your hair. And if you knew my daughters, you'd know how shocking it is that they're starting to brush their hair. You know, cat boxes aren't getting, you know, changed, et cetera, et cetera. And so they become a wife and a mother, and they start nurturing people and putting other people first. So they start actually sort of cutting up little sandwiches into eighths and folding little socks and doing the laundry, which is not rational behavior because you have a family of able-bodied people around you. My daughters are 6 feet tall and they can do it for themselves, but they're just like normal, self-involved people are just doing their texting and their Wi-Fi and the whatever, while the mother is busy running around and doing all this. And so when menopause comes on, that's when the cloud lifts, and then as if in a dream, she sees herself like cutting up all these little sandwiches. And she says, why am I cutting up these sandwiches? And she starts hurling the sandwiches. So that's actually what's going on with us. So that maybe, that hum maybe worked for you guys for that, but this is kind of a moment where you might have to wake up and hum, you know, and start to be awake. Although I have to say,
what are we supposed to do though when that happens? I don't think. Like, I got the impression from your book that there's absolutely nothing that a man could possibly say when you're throwing the sandwiches that would make you stop.
I'd say your book,
you know, don't throw sandwiches. That's stupid. That would be like what I would say. You know, clearly that's not a right thing to say. But
your book is so funny, and I've been a fan, of course, longer than you've been a fan of mine. I have like been reading your books forever, and you're the newest book. If you don't have it, you must get it immediately. It is so funny, and although of course I just read the Turning 50 book also, so I may be conflating the two books because I have no memory. But where you had this thing about the English grammar, the English grammar handbook, and you said, and you start getting it more and more, let's say, controversial. Yeah, it isn't really traditional. And you said, like, for instance, you should not use run-on sentences. And run-on sentences go on a little when you should have quit earlier. And one of the wrong sentences is, you don't look fat in those pants more than you usually do. That's an example of what not to do at this point with the lady, because one of the things that's going to happen, and you make all these things about, like in midlife, that we gain weight just by looking at a commercial which has food in it, right? But women and men, I mean, you complain about it a little bit with your vegan, sausage, meat-free sausage, but women, I embark on this thing that happened where I and my partner tried to go on the zone diet at the same time. And of course, the men can have 14 units and you can have 9 units, and then they cheat. I mean, it seems to me that men just switch to light beer occasionally, and then they drop 25 pounds. Isn't that right? And it's not, and we women, we're counting the carbs in ketchup. And I had a thing, I have to share one story before I go back to you, because I want to hear about your colonoscopy, and now we're going to veer into
Not on my
stuff.
account.
No. They found you had a dry vagina, but you forgot, and I won't worry about that. So I went to I can't stand going to the doctor, and I know you're a famous medical wimp also.
Yeah.
I don't like going to the doctor because I can't face being weighed. I just can't see the number. It's too big a number. But at the bottom of my year of depression and raging hormones, I go to the doctor, and I'm just crying in the waiting room. They go, Sandra? And then they put me on a scale. And it was like, the detector said, like weights are falling off the scale, and it's like a number, e to the x has exponents and Greek letters and Roman numerals in it. It's like, this is my weight on Jupiter, I don't know what it is. I weigh more than my father. And then they literally go, Sarah? And they had made a mistake. So I had to go back into the waiting room, cry, because I weigh more than a mule or something. And I think I'm losing water weight. Sandra, I go back on the very same scale. I have gained 1.5 pounds. I'm not kidding. So Dave Barry, you complain. I think you actually have no idea how bad it is for us.
I agree with women. Women have it worse. I mean, I've seen childbirth at close range a couple times. I would never do that in a million years.
Right, and I think the only thing worse about having childbirth, which is terrible, is seeing it. I think you're right. I think it's worse seeing it.
I will. The system that was around when I was born, which was the mother had to be there, I guess, biologically. But they gave her drugs. She woke up when the child was in like 2nd grade,
Right,
the dad was the only people who saw the childbirth were trained medical professionals getting paid a lot of money to see it.
Yeah.
And that was a good system. But I just want to say that I will never argue that men have it as bad as women physically. Never will I make that argument. Except for that lately, things that where I think it was women's issues, women's problems used to be much more commonly discussed on TV. Men's, I think, were not so much now. What makes me crazy is Viagra commercials. For a number of reasons. Like, who wants to be sitting there with your 13-year-old, 14-year-old daughter, and having the guy
Bob Dole,
but that erectile dysfunction that could be. And I don't. But the other thing is that the way they depict men in Viagra commercials. There's one which is often in heavy rotation during football season. It's the one where there's a rangy cowpoke driving a pickup truck, and he's towing a trailer with 2 horses in it. You know what I'm talking about? And he's driving across the range with his pickup, and he gets stuck, which is a metaphor. And then the announcer says, and this is the part of the commercial that I really hate. The announcer says, "You've reached the age where you don't back down from a challenge." And that is, first of all, complete bullshit. The whole point, the only really good thing about being an older guy, which I am, is that you do back right down from a challenge. And if you have any doubt about that, go to YouTube and search for any variation of the phrase, "shoot bottle rocket out of ass." Seriously. If you do, you will find...
Which is called giving birth, so... labor videos on there, but anyway.
It's more spontaneous. Anyway, you will see literally hundreds of videos of people shooting bottle rockets out of their butts, and it goes without saying it's not women. No woman would ever do that, right? It's a male. It's always a male, but it's a young male because they don't back down from a challenge. If somebody said, "Hey, I bet you can't shoot a bottle rocket out of here." "Yeah, I bet I can." You say that to an older guy like me or Senator Bob Graham, and we're going to say, "No, we don't want to go to the emergency room with bottle rocket burns on our ass." But anyway, that's the commercial. And what he does, the rangy cowpoke, is he gets the horses out and he uses them to tow the truck out of the mud, and then he has sex with the horses. Because that's
then
kind of
shoots bottle rockets out of the bath.
Well, we don't know that happens, but there are no women in this commercial, I guess. But the point is, I think men, it was the one good thing about being a guy used to be that you didn't talk about anything, ever. And now, really, we don't have that much to say. I have friends, good friends, and when my wife, Michelle, who's here somewhere, when she sees somebody she knows, she can talk to that person for an hour, even if they saw each other 8 minutes before. They can find an hour's worth of material in the 8 minutes apart to discuss. And I can see friends of mine that I haven't seen in 15 years, and we're done in under 30 seconds. And that's why we talk about sports. That is why men talk about sports, because we don't have anything else to talk about. That's why we do it. I can't remember what the point was I was trying to make here, but it had to do with...
I think that's a perfect moment to segue shakily into Shades of Grey.
Oh, yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
Let's talk about it,
because I made a valiant attempt. I wanted to find out...
this is good. You're the only person I know who has admitted reading the whole book.
I wanted to find out why 200 million people bought that book. That was the most successful book ever written. Anybody in this room read 50 Shades of Grey? Okay, we got some bold women.
Okay.
One of them's a professional book reviewer, so she had written so 200 million women read it, and I know women who read it, and not my wife, I should point out. She always wants me to point that out. And so I read the book. Did you read the book?
Okay, so my insertion before we go, I tried to read it because, we all go as book authors. Well, if so many people are reading this, I'm going to buy it. But it's like on the Kindle because the kids read the Kindle. It's like, how am I going to buy this book? So it is on the Kindle, unfortunately. And I found in the first 50 pages, I grew up, I'm 52, so in my day, there was like Judith Krantz books. Does anyone remember Judith Krantz? Yeah? And love her, you're going, love her. And she wrote a book called Dazzle, and I still have it. And that was a time when heroines, the star of Dazzle is Jazz Kilcullen, fashion photographer. And, those gals in New York, if they were by page 2, they needed to be spilling out of a cab in big elephant pants with maybe the crotch cut out, drunk on 10 bottles of champagne and having sex. They're always like, get up on the desk and have sex. It's kind of like, so that was like soft porn for me in those days, right? Jazz goes on. And in Shades of Grey,
what about the pants again? I didn't get
I don't know. I think we best not. It had nothing to do with dry vagina, let me tell you that. So, but then in Shades of Grey, she's sort of nervous and she keeps dropping her tape recorder. And 50 pages, you gotta give me something. I'm not gonna read 50 pages before somebody tears the buttons go flying or something. Come on, there's no time to waste.
So in other words, you're complaining about 50 Shades of Grey, it wasn't dirty enough.
It wasn't dirty enough soon enough because I don't have that much of a attention span. It's got a grip, it's like Jazz Kilcullen, but you, all right, but you read the whole book.
I did. I read the book, and here's the thing: and women who admitted that you read it can back me up on this. The plot is essentially this: a woman described who's the biggest ninny ever. She's obviously gorgeous because she tells us every 3 minutes, every 3 sentences that somebody's telling her she's gorgeous, but she doesn't think she's gorgeous.
That is such a chick lit.
Yeah,
it really
and
is.
so,
it's the worst habit.
But it's just like the vampire woman and all that.
Yeah.
They never figure out how gorgeous they are. They just keep writing it. So anyway, she meets this guy, and he's a typical guy. He's 27. He's a billionaire.
Sure.
And he's the hottest human being on the planet. And when she's not telling us how gorgeous people are telling her she is, she's telling us how gorgeous he is, so that she's, they develop a relationship. And here's the thing, and I'm going to cut a lot out, but this is essentially, he wants to tie her up and hit her.
Uh-huh.
That's what he wants to do.
Nice.
He likes to do that. So they have sex, and he kind of broaches the subject of tying her up to hit her, and she doesn't really want to get tied up and get hit. So she's going to question, but then he's really hot, so they have sex again, and then he wants to tie her up and hit her, but she's really not into that, but he's really hot, so they 300 pages of that.
Wait, there was...
I'm not kidding. This is the plot of the book. And after 300 pages, finally she decides, because he's so hot and everything, and he's so sincere about wanting to tie her up and hit her, that she's going to let him tie her up and hit her. And she does, and spoiler alert, it hurts.
What?
She doesn't like it. So she breaks up with him, and that is the end of the book. I'm not kidding. That's the plot of this book.
Well, also that reminds me of a review that was written many years ago by someone smart whose name I don't remember because of the menopausal problem. But that's a problem if you try to read a book like that on Kindle, you can't really fast forward. But if you have it as a beach book, you can take it to the beach, fall asleep, and then the wind will brush sand through 400 pages, and then you can wake up and read it. So that's the problem with the Kindle. Now, I think that brings us right back, that happy story now to our daughter's dating.
Oh yeah. Well, we
on
okay.
that happy subject.
You have a 15-year-old.
I have a 12 and a 14-year-old.
A 14.
And okay, and so my thing is that, and my 14-year-old, and I hope that there's nobody in the Miami Book Festival that will see this streaming, but maybe they will. My 14-year-old, as I said, has just started. She just got a boyfriend. She's never mentioned boys before. I thought maybe she may have been one of the new gay teens that are everywhere running around, and that's good. And it's almost like if you're not gay, you better get out of the closet because you're going to be bullied if you're not gay, practically, in California. Probably not in Florida, but in California, it's the law. You must be a gay teen. That's just the way it is there. And I go, oh, it's like, and my daughter is white as the driven snow because her father was from your favorite state, next to your favorite state, South Dakota. Not North Dakota. South Dakota. So in LA, because she's blonde and blue-eyed and blonde like Children of the Corn blonde, so that when I used to take her around in playgrounds, this is a digression, but that's what we're digressing. In LA, people used to take me as her nanny. Right, because like, what are you stealing a white baby or something like that? So now she's dating a El Salvadorian 11th grade boy, and I'm sort of worried. But then I meet him, and he's 6'1", and he's gorgeous and seems gay. Which is great, which is like jackpot. And I told a 50-something-year-old mom, a friend of mine, she goes, that's great, my first 3 boyfriends were gay. And mine too. It's kind of like we all dated sort of gay. So I think it may be okay. But I think you dads worry like more about your daughters, because you say what the boys are thinking, but we know what girls think too, and they may have an upper hand or secret weapons you dads don't know about.
Well, I certainly hope so. I would like to have an actual physical weapon. But I don't. But they're like squirrels, the boys. The other night, this is true. Sophie, our daughter, at 12:30, I was sound asleep. I found out about this the next day. She goes, I'm not going to name the boy, but
he's dead.
So he's here with his friends. They just happen to be in the neighborhood. It's 12:30 at night. What do you mean? And they're just like lurking out there, ready to get in. So I want to have a trap built, a humane steel trap baited with something that would attract teenage boys like fireworks, bottle rockets. And so when I hear the doors clang shut, I go out and there's a 14, 15-year-old boy in the trap, and I would take him out in the Everglades and release him.
Catch and release.
In a humane manner. Let him fend, maybe visit the pythons. Well, we're supposed to take questions, and I know it's been kind of rigid. We've been right on subject topic here. But we actually can talk about pretty much anything. Sandra especially. Just get her started. No, there's a microphone there, or you can just want to shout. So if anybody has any questions or any problems at home you would like to share with the group, we're here for you. Or we'll keep talking, but I know we were supposed to take questions. There's a brave, courageous volunteer, or else he's leaving. I don't know.
He's texting.
So what's the mom's secret weapon?
What's the mom's secret weapon? I think I think probably rage, just uncorking some rage that's so scary that when you go from, what you're doing and people see mom go, and the next comes out. And I think that it is, I know certainly when I experienced my mom doing it the first time, it's like, oh my God. She was turning 48, and so I thought it would be a great idea, since she did that baking all the time, to get her a nice new glass Pyrex baking dish. And so it's like, because the old iron ones are rusty here. And she opened it and turned into like Medusa and hurled it against the wall. So, "Do you think of me as your baker?" And that was like truly scary. And it was scary because suddenly, instead of mom being that, sort of the Medusa head comes down and, I don't like kosher salt, or, like that, like, who knows what they're talking about.
She's scaring me a little bit. Now I explain why, because like I consider myself an enlightened guy, grew up in the era of women's liberation and feminism, and women can do everything, and all the stereotypes about women being irrational and everything, bull, men being the cold, realist, practical ones, and women. And here you come along, and I'm thinking, like, I've been on many airplanes where the pilot was a woman, and I've been fine with that. I'm sure she could fly the plane way better than that, but I'm thinking, like, well, what if she happens to be, should I ask her maybe, are you like feeling a little menopausal? Maybe I'll just get another flight. In case the rage, how would the desire to throw a casserole against a wall translate to a woman piloting a 767? That's, I guess, what I'm asking you.
So now we can do a little bit of acting out for you. And I can go, "Oh, yeah, Dave Barry, yeah? You think a woman is going to do that? Let me tell you." This is an enactment only. "Let me tell you something now. It used to be said," and I'll kind of do some like this. I'm like, "That it used to be said, do you remember, in your fantastic Day Turning 50 book, that a woman could not be president because once a month she would go crazy and hit the red button, right? But that has never happened in the history of man or womankind. When it comes to hormones and that being a handicap with politics, Dave Barry, it's not estrogen that's the problem, it's testosterone." Because if you think of how many of our male candidates, I'm a Democrat, I cry so often, how many we lost along the way, Gary Hart, you may not remember, John Edley, it's like they not just have zipper problems, but now I'm going to sit down because I'm out of breath and I've thrown my hip out just having that. They don't just have zipper problems. That's the most illogical. Also, I wore these shoes for Miami. I hope that I could wear them. Not being rude, I just thought it'd be cool. Thank you.
Give it up for Sandra Tsing Loh shoes.
Okay, where was I? No,
Let's get her on another topic if we can.
But the political, isn't it so illogical? It's kind of like, okay, if you're going to have an affair, pay cash. Right? You know what I mean? Don't put it with the federal funds. Try not to have it with your pinwheel-eyed intern who has like a history of stalking, a dossier of stalking political candidates. Try not to have it on your desk in the Oval Office when cameras are going. Or if you're going to take selfies of yourself and post them nude, try not to Instagram them to the entire state of New York, right? But they do. So there's the illogic. You're worried about the female pilot? For God's sake, Dave Barry, you should be ashamed of yourself.
I'm not gonna defend myself here.
And do I look fat in these pants? I do.
Hey, Dave, could you say something about what's in your book? And I'd like your take on the election.
On which election? The one we just had, or the one that's coming up? Well, I just want to say, and here we have a wonderful former governor from our state in the room here. And we've had good governors from both parties. But I got to say, this last election, ointment and suppository. It's like the most unpleasant election cycle I've ever, We finally went and voted. I'm not even sure I remember for whom anymore, but it was the most depressing election I can remember down here. Was there another part? Oh, the book. I'm just trying to think if there's anything in the book that we haven't talked about. It's there's a discussion in the book about a trip I took to Israel. I'm not Jewish. My wife is Jewish, Cuban Jewish, Juban. They didn't come on rafts. They parted the Caribbean. That's my Juban joke. And so, but we went. We belong to a temple. It's a very relaxed. Like there's Orthodox, conservative, Reform. Ours is relaxed. They let me in. And we went to Israel. And have you ever been to Israel?
I haven't, but I lived in Egypt. But your descriptions are amazing.
If you ever get a chance to ride a camel, don't. They have this camel. The Bedouin operates like Disney World. The camel train pulls up, and tourists get off the bus, and you get on the camels are tied nose to tail, and you get on a camel, and 2 people per camel, which seems like a fun thing to do until you actually get on a camel, which is not designed for humans, And the guide says, he's giving you some instructions. He says, "Do not scream when the camel is getting up. The camel is getting up a little funny." And I'm thinking, well, how bad can it be? It's like, whoa! So, anyway.
Also, the Dead Sea, I think.
The Dead Sea is the
no.
most. The other thing is, no form of life is stupid enough to go into the Dead Sea except tourists. Even plants are smarter than that. It's toxic stew. That's why nothing lives in it. And so, anyway, if you have a crevice in your body, and trust me, you do. You have more than you know. It will be sore for days. Yes, sir.
I'd just like to say that when your daughter is 14, and you think that she's done all those things, wait till she becomes 18, she'll tell you she did those things when she was 12.
Nice.
Yeah. And I only have one daughter. She's 31. That's all I can emotionally afford.
Thank you. That's the voice of experience.
That is stealable. That's stealable.
That's not going to be true of my daughter. But anyway.
Jail.
Any other questions? No? It's absolutely done.
No.
Yes.
Men. The men are.
It's the men who are stepping up.
Yeah, they are.
Hi, Dave. Any plans for a Rock Bottom Remainders reunion?
Thank you for asking. The Rock Bottom, for the benefit of those of you who've never seen, the Rock Bottom Remainders is a band of authors, which has played many times here at the Miami Book Fair. It's not a good band. Roy Blunt Jr., who is one of our members, described our genre as hard listening music. And I always say we play, well, I call it the rumor method of music, which is everybody's holding an instrument and playing something, and then a rumor goes around that there's been a chord change. You go, whoa! And then everybody switches to another chord, but not necessarily the same other chord. And we've had, over the years, we've had a lot of actual musicians, real musicians, perform with us. Bruce Springsteen played once with the Rock Bottom Remainders. And I had to ask him, the last song we usually play, and he came on at the very end, is Gloria, which is, for those of you who don't know Gloria, it's a fundamental rock and roll. It's probably the simplest rock and roll song ever. If you take a guitar and throw it on the ground, it will play Gloria. And Bruce Springsteen gets on stage with us, and I had to say to Bruce Springsteen, "Bruce, do you know Gloria?" And he goes, "I think I can handle it." And he did okay, but he's never written a book, so we didn't let him stay in the band. But our most famous member is Stephen King, who has been on this very stage, performed with the band many times, and people always say, "What is Stephen King really like?" And he's actually a fairly normal, smart, funny guy. But when he sang, he was a little scary, partly because of his musicianship, but also he would take liberties with the lyrics. And my favorite example was one night we were doing, he was singing a song called "Last Kiss," which is a teenage death anthem, perfect song for Stephen King. And it's actually it's a kind of a pretty song. And we weren't sounding bad, and we were actually doing most of the chords right. And we get to the moment after the car crash, the tragic verse in the song, and Stephen sings, "When I awoke, she was lying there, I brushed her liver from my hair. So it's a little scary, but anyway, the band it sort of disbanded a couple years ago. We're gonna get together again in Tucson at the Tucson Book Festival. I'm not sure why. We get worse because we never practice. I understand other bands practice and then play. What we do is we play and then we go, we should practice some of these songs, man. But we never get around to that. Anyway, we have a woman has stepped up to the microphone.
I like both of you a great deal. I've grown up mostly in Miami, but also lived in California, and you both have such a great eye for the absurd. So I wonder, Sandra, as sort of a new person to Miami, what's caught your eye about our fair city? And Dave, I am taking a bold move and putting my head into the ring of county government, which I imagine is the source of a lot of your best material. So I would love to hear your thoughts on sort of some of the absurd challenges we're going to be facing, not just the election, but all the other things that are happening in the city, the growth that you've seen in the last 30 years and what's to come.
I love that question because I was just ruminating that I was going to, I want to talk about that. So yes, I love Florida so much. I get off.
Are you being sarcastic? Because you sound like you're being sarcastic.
I do. I think that like the food, the coral pink sky, the food is amazing, and I will say a couple of observations. We went to. We sort of walked around. I think some of the houses are even more eccentrically put together than some in Los Angeles. We're heard that we don't have building codes in Los Angeles, so you'll see sort of a Tudor mansion next to an Egyptian pavilion, next to a Swiss chalet, next to an Indian, so it's a little eccentric there. But I saw some houses where I go, wow, they're like 2 lions and a small swimming pool and a big satellite dish and look at those tapestries and marble colonnades. I saw some stuff that I go, now this really would give LA some of the run for its money. But we went also last night to what I love about Miami that actually kind of compares interestingly with Los Angeles, where we went to a restaurant. We found it was a Peruvian seafood restaurant, which would not normally be a destination, but people seem to be lining up and getting in there. And the diners range, it was almost like a little hole in the wall from, I said to Mr. Y, my boyfriend, I said, I've never been to a restaurant where there are both ties and tattoos. I've never actually seen that. So there are guys in ties, there are people in tattoos, there are families. There were women coming in, and I was just looking at the back of the outfit, and it was just a zipper. I don't know how that's physically possible, but there's like a zipper and white pants, and a mom who was of an ethnicity I didn't quite know, but she had it appeared that she had 1 black son and 1 white son, and they were enjoying Peruvian seafood, and it was the most eclectic thing, and it was like somebody's rollerblading in, he's maybe 82, and wearing pink Richard Simmons shorts, but there's also a businesswoman alone texting. It was the most eclectic group I've seen, and more eclectic than a New York subway, I would say. But I think that there's something that I love about both our cities that I was gonna ask you about to label this on top of the question that you've already been asked is, I flew in from Los Angeles to Miami, Florida. So we are here very far from New York, which kind of wraps around to your opening thing of my New York Times. Where I think that I would venture to say, and you can tell me if you agree or not, that there's something great about Los Angeles and Miami because they're cities where people are in neon pink shorts and they're palm trees. You just have to start laughing when you see a palm tree and coconuts in it. We don't take ourselves seriously. We do not. We're not, and I would say, and I don't want to attack anybody here who may be from these cities, but there's certain cities that they're almost too proud of themselves, like Boston, ooh, Portland, really? Or San Francisco, ooh, we're San Francisco, we're Northern California, you Southern California. Oh, look at our great coffee and our whatever, coffee. Coffee is not so awesome that it should be a
I think
religion.
both Miami and LA, the beautiful thing about them both is neither one has been infested with hipsters. You know what I mean?
Right.
We're not trying that hard.
Right.
The big difference, I think, in LA, this is what I perceive to be the biggest difference, is the driving. In LA, everybody's driving according to the law, and in Miami, everybody's driving according to the law of his or her individual country of origin. And the woman who's running for my proposal for streamlining local government, and I'm sure this wouldn't apply to it was county commissioner you said you were running for? Anyway, my idea is we have the election, then we swear them in and indict them in one ceremony.
And I am forced by the Miami Book Festival's founder to make you say the joke that you say about how people signal for turns in Miami.
We don't signal for turns. Well, you might occasionally hear gunfire, which would indicate
with a firearm.
that usually indicates the person would like to get past you, you know, or just the gun went off. You can't really. Anyway, well, I think we're about there. Is there any? Yeah, okay, we have one more.
So, you are both dedicated to making other people laugh. What hits your funny bones? What makes you laugh?
Aside from the federal government.
Aside from what you each say and write about, what makes each of you laugh, triggers your laughter?
Well, I'm not going to shoehorn you into any sort of answer, but I have spent sort of the last couple of weeks, because I knew I was coming here, of rereading an old book and a new book of yours. And I'm going to say flat out, and there are no other book authors of this type, flat out, on the page, Dave Barry, you are so funny, and you're one of the few that I am really laughing out loud on the page. You have certain motifs that you use. Certain motifs. Squirrels come into play, zucchinis that look like Winston Churchill come into play. You described hemorrhoids in a way the guy says, I feel like I'm sitting on a burning grapefruit. And I just was apoplectic. When you went to Israel, they gave you money in shekels, and you thought it was a toy currency, like moolah.
Did you know that the actual currency in Israel is shekels? I thought that was a joke. It's like they're going to, hey, you want... They give you, well, here, 1 shekel is 10 simoleons,
And you have this bizarre thing of kind of like, how to, survive in wilderness. And the thing is, you're laughing so hard. You're
Sandra, you can't do this. You can't do this to me now.
To your partner. I know, but you don't, then you can say the election makes it. Where you said,
I think Sandra, no.
Lay someone on the ground, and then the tapeworm treats can be set out behind their butt with a cane. But you can set them down very slowly and say loudly, no tapeworm treats here. So
they have no idea why you.
I know,
saying
exactly,
that.
and that's in you too, like a crazy person. So I'm going to say, and then you have to dig yourself out of your own hole. But we live sometimes in a time going back to the news, and I have a little thing, if I may, where the New Yorker is a great magazine, and the cartoons are funny, but I don't ever understand any of the humor on the New Yorker. I'm so sorry. I'm a stupid person. It's always just some abstract. They're really smart, and this is an abstract play about something that would be funny that has I cannot understand. Maybe that's the level of sort of crude and sophomoric readers who enjoy your writing. So maybe it's not that. I don't understand the New Yorker humor, but I think to have it on the page, the humor that makes you laugh on the page, and you do a lot with typography and quotes and quote marks that are really hilarious to read on the page. It's not a blog. It's not a poetry slam. It's literally to get me to laugh on the page. It's like you really, because you construct those sentences and the absurdity, and it's really amazing. So that's my answer.
Well, for my money, there's nobody funnier than Vice President Biden. Anyway.
What is an air biscuit?
Are you really asking me in front of these people?
Because it was a Joe Biden thing.
An air biscuit is well, you mentioned hysterical flatulence early on as a that would be, yeah.
Air biscuit.
So on that note.
Good. If they don't understand we're laughing at something, that's good.
Let's have one more round of applause for Sandra, who came all the way out here from Los Angeles.
Thank you.